Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Python for Beginners. In today's tutorial, we are going to look at dictionaries. A dictionary is a data type in Python. A dictionary is an unordered collection of items and it's comprised of a key value pair. A dictionary is created by placing the key value pair in curly brackets, like this one here or this one here. So this means you can create a dictionary with a single key value pair or multiple key value pairs. An empty dictionary can also be created. So to do that, you just need to specify the curly brackets like this one here or using this command. Key value pairs are known as items. And if you want to preserve the order in which key value pairs are inserted into a dictionary, then you will have to use an ordered dictionary. So you can create that using this command. Let me also say that the Python notebook for this tutorial is available. So you can just download that for practice. So the download link to this notebook is available in the description box. So just check that out. Now for this tutorial, of course, you need to have Python installed. But if you don't have Python installed, you can still use your internet browser. So use your internet browser and then visit the Google Colab platform. There's the link, and I'll leave the link to this page in the description box. I repeat, this is the link, and I'll leave the link to this page in the description box. So when you are here, just click anywhere and then come to File and then come to New Notebook. So click it, and then when you click it, you will have a notebook open for you like this one here. And then you can type your Python command. So I say 1 + 1 and I'll get my results. Okay, so if you don't have Python installed, just use your browser and then visit the Google Colab platform. Now let's get back to our Python interface. So we will start the exercise now. So we will begin by creating additional objects. So I have some approaches here. We will start by creating an empty dictionary. So for the empty dictionary, I'll give you two approaches. So let's start with approach 1. So with approach 1, I can say my dict equals, and I'll bring my curly brackets. And I can say my dict. So this will give me this one, telling me that the dictionary is empty. Now let's look at approach 2. Approach 2, this is how it's going to be. We'll say my dict2 equals, and I'll say dict, and I'll execute the command. So this will give me another dictionary. So I can say my dict2, and I'll have that also here. So these are the two approaches you can use to create empty dictionaries. Now let's continue. Let's create a non-empty dictionary. So creating a non-empty dictionary means that the dictionary will have some initial values. So let's look at how we will do that now. Perfect. Now let's do this. So let's say we want to create a dictionary that has information for a student. Okay, so I can say my info like this, my info, and I'll say equals, and I'll bring my curly brackets, and then in the curly brackets, I'll now specify my key value pair or key value pairs. So my info, let's say I want to add the student's ID. So I can just bring my key, which is ID, and then I bring my colon, and I'll say 1011. So this is the key, this is the value. So we now have a key value pair. So this key and then this value are separated using a colon. Okay, so that's how we make entries, or we add entries. Now if I want to add another key value pair, then I have to bring a comma and then add that key value pair. So let's say name. So I have name, colon, and I'll say Michael. Let's add Michael's age. So another comma, and then I say age, and then I say 19. Okay, so this becomes my dictionary. So this key and then its value are separated by a colon, and then a key value pair is separated from the next key value pair, okay, by what? A comma. So that's how we create a non-empty dictionary. So let's execute this command. Perfect. So now I can say my info, and then I'll get my dictionary being displayed for me. So that's how we do that. Let's create another dictionary. So let's say scores. So we want to add scores for players. So I can say scores equals player 1, score is 20, player 2, score is, let's say, 30, player 3, score is, let's say, 45. So player 1, 20, player 2, 30, player 3, 45. So scores, and I'll have that also here. Okay, so let's look at this. You'll notice that I use strings as keys. Okay, but you can also use numbers as keys. Okay, this tutorial, I'm just keeping it simple. That's why I'm using strings as keys, but you can use numbers as well. So we can experiment. Just try your hands and then see what comes up. Okay, now let's continue. So we have created our not empty dictionaries. So let's look at another thing here. Let's look at how to create an ordered dictionary object. Sometimes you can create your dictionary, but then if you display the items, it will not be the same as the order in which you added them. So if you want your dictionary items to be displayed in the same order as how you enter the key value pair, then you have to use a dictionary object which is ordered. So that means you have to use an ordered dictionary. So we will look at how to create that. So to create an ordered dictionary, you need to first import that function from the collections module. So I'll say from collections import ordered dict. And after that, I'll create my ordered dictionary. So I can say my OD equals ordered dict. So this creates the ordered dictionary. So I can say my OD. And that is given here. It's also empty, by the way. So that's how it is. We will look at how to add entries later on. But for now, let's look at how to create a dictionary from lists. That's the next activity. So you can create a dictionary from lists. So that means you need to have your list already prepared. So let's look at this. Let's say we have names. Names. I have Michael. I have Kobena. This is a Ghanaian name. I have Kwame, which is also a Ghanaian name. I have Nancy. Let's say I have their ages also in a different list, a separate list. So I can see ages, let's say 19, 22, 26, 17. I have that also here. So if I want to create a dictionary from lists like this, then I can just say, let's say age info, that would be the dictionary name. So I can say age info equals, and I'll say dict zip names ages. So let's execute this command. And I can say age info, and I'll have them here. So I have Michael 19, Kwabena 22, Kwame 26, Nancy 17. So the names here, the lists, okay, and then the ages here, this list. You should have the same number of items in both lists, okay, so that the mapping can be done. So the first element here, its corresponding value is the first element in the ages list. So there's that mapping. That is what is used to create the key value pairs. So because this names appears first, that becomes the key. And then this one here, the second, that becomes the value. So you have to determine which of the lists will be used as keys and which of them will be used as values. So that one, it depends on you. But just know that this is the order. So the first one becomes the key, the second one becomes the values. So that's what we have here. Okay, so that's how we create a dictionary from list. Now let's look at another thing here. Let's look at how we can create a dictionary using dictionary comprehension. It's also possible to do that. So I'll still copy the names here and then the ages. And then I'll create the dictionary. So let's say my index 3. So to create a dictionary using dictionary comprehensions, I bring my curly brackets and then I can say name comma age for name, age in zip, names, ages, like this. And then I'll execute the command. So now I've created a dictionary. So I can say my index 3 and I'll get that also here. So there's another way to create dictionary. So this time we are using dictionary comprehensions. Okay, so we have different approaches. You should also take note that these approaches that we have used, you have to look at the situation at hand and then use the appropriate approach. Okay, so each of these approaches can be used depending on what problems you want to solve and what data you have and then what situation you find yourself in. Okay, so just look at all these approaches and then look at the one which works best for you. And of course, if you compare this one, the dictionary comprehension, if you compare this to this one here, this is pretty simple and straightforward. Okay, so you just need to look at the one which works best for you and the one which is kind of simple to use as a beginner. Okay, so just mention that there are different approaches to create dictionary. So just look at the situation at hand and then look at what works best for you. I repeat, there are different approaches to create dictionary. So just look at the situation at hand and then use the appropriate approach and then get your data created. Okay, now let's continue. So we'll proceed by adding entries to a dictionary. That will be the next step. Perfect. Now we are going to learn how to add entries to a dictionary. So that means we are going to add key value pairs. So how do we do that? Let's create a dictionary. Let's say student info because I'm adding some students. So let's see, I have let's say I have this dictionary. I have Michael. Michael's age is 19. Let's say Kobina. Kobina's age is 22. Students info. Now, if I want to add the age for another student, then it's simple and straightforward. We just have to call that dictionary and then bring a square brackets and then indicate the key, the new key. So let's say AMA, and then we say equals, let's say 17. Okay, so this is how we add entries to a dictionary. So let's execute this command. So now if I call the students info dictionary again, I'll have the new entry, which is AMA. Take note that for dictionary objects, the keys are unique. And so if, let's say, I issue this command again, and then I say 22, let's just say I'm adding another key. Okay, it has the name AMA, which is already existing. And if I execute this, Then what happens is that the new value here will replace the old one, which was 17. Okay, so in dictionaries or in dictionary objects, the keys are unique. Okay, so you can't have two keys with the same name or the same label. You can't have that in Python dictionary objects. So that is why this one is look for that key, that same key, and then change its value from 17 to 22. So take note of that. So this is how we add entries. Now let's continue. Now we are going to look at how to look up items in a dictionary objects. Okay, so that's what we are going to do next. So let's do that now. So for that, we'll first look at how to get the number of items in a dictionary. Okay, how to get a number of items. So that the number of items here, I'm referring to the key value pairs. That's what we are going to do next. So let's look at how to do that now. Okay, so we'll continue. So to do that, I'll say, let me just create this dictionary again. Alternatively, I can just copy this. Let me just do this. So let's say students info. I'll just add this. Okay, so if I want to get a number of items, that is key value pairs, I can say len student info. So this will give me 3. Okay, so that means we have 3 students. Now let's look at the scores. You know, we created a dictionary called scores. Let's use this one here also. So if let's say I want to get the number of players, okay, the number of players here, that means that we are looking at the records available. Which players can we get records about? Can we get their records? I can just say len scores, and that will give me 3. So the 3 is what we have here. So player 1, player 2, player 3, and we also have their respective scores here. So that's how we get a number of items, that is key value pairs. Now, what about if we want to get all the keys? Let's look at that. If you want to get all the keys in a dictionary, then it's simple and straightforward. Let's start with the student info. I'll just copy that here. So if I want to get all the keys, then I can say studentinfo.keys. Okay, so that's what I have. So this gives me the students, okay, the names, okay, of the students. That's what we have. So you can do same for the scores as well, and then get the keys. Now, if I want to get all the values, then it's also simple. I'll still use the same dictionary objects here. So if I want to get the values, so in this case, the values are what? The ages. Then I can say student info dot values. And this will give me the ages, the values that I have here. Okay, so I can get the keys or identifiers. I can also get the values. That's what you have here. So just try. So create your own dictionary objects and then try and then get the keys and then the values. Now, what we do was to get the keys and the values separately, but you can also get the key value pairs. That means both keys and values at the same time. Okay, so how do we do that? So to get all the key value pairs. Again, I'll just copy and paste the dictionary objects here. I can say student info.items, and this will give me the key value pair. So I have Michael, the age is 19, Kobna, the age is 22, Amma, the age is 22. Okay, so that's what we have here. Sometimes too, you want to check for the presence of a key. You want to check if a particular entry is available, is present in that dictionary. So how do we do that? Let's do that here. So let's still use the same student info. Again, I'll just copy it. But you can also create your own dictionary. So if I want to check the presence of a key, let's say Michael, I want to check if there's an entry for a student named Michael. Then I can say Michael in student info. And it's true because there's a Michael here. I can also say this. I can also say Michael in student info dot keys. So this will also give me the same results. Okay, so you can use these two approaches to check for the presence of a key. Now, what about values? What about values? Let's check. Let's say I have my student info. Okay. Now, what we was to check for the names, which we have found. Now, if let's say you want to check if there's an entry for a student called, let's say, Nancy, I can say Nancy in student info. And then I have false because when we look at the records here, there's no record for Nancy. You can also use the other approach. Nancy in student info dot keys, and we are going to get false. Okay, so it's true if there's an entry with that label Michael, and it's false if there's no key with that name or that label. Okay, so that's how we check for the presence of a key in a dictionary. Now, what about checking for the presence of a value? Let's do that here. Let's check for the presence of a value. So again, let me just copy this dictionary objects. I'll paste it here. Let's say I want to check. Now, what I have here, I have the students' names, and they also have their respective ages. So if let's say I want to check if there is a student, or let me just put it, if let's say I want to check if any of the students is 19 years old, that means I'll have to check for the presence of the value 19. So to do that, I can say 19 in student info dot values. And this will be true if there's 19 here. And of course, we see that Michael is 19 years old. So this is true. Let's say 32. in student info values is false because there's nothing like 32 here. Okay, the students here, none of them is 32 years old, so that's why we have false here. Okay, so let's continue. Now let's look at another thing here. How do we get the value of a key? Now I have my dictionary. There's Michael, there's Kobna, there's Amma. These are the keys and these are the respective values. So if let's say I want to get the age of Michael, this is my database. I'm asking what is the age of Michael. That's what this one is for, getting the value of a key. Okay, so to narrow it down to what you have here, that means we are asking how to get the ages of the students. So to do that, I can just come here and I'll show you two approaches. Let's look at them here. So let's look at approach one. So with approach one, let me just copy everything here. I think I'll just do that here. So with approach one, you just need to call the dictionary object and specify the key. Let's say Michael. So I'm asking, what is the value for this particular key? Or in other words, what is the age of Michael? Because this data here is what? The names and then the ages of the student. So what is the age of Michael? So this is how we do it. So now I have the result, that is 19. Let's try for Amma. It's 22. Now let's try this. We have everything here. Let's say we want to get the age of a student, and that student, the entry is not here. Let's say student info. Let's say Nancy. Nancy is not here. We don't have any entry, any records for Nancy. So let's see this. How do we do this? Let's look at this. Let's use this command. That's what you get. Okay. So you get this because this is the default behavior of the dictionary. So if you use this approach to get the value of a key and the key does not exist in that dictionary, then you are going to get this error message coming up. Okay. So if you have your Python codes and then you use this approach to get the values and then the key does not exist, then that means that you have an error and then your program may break. Okay, so there's a way around it. Okay, there's a way that you can use if you know that some of the keys may not be present. This is where approach 2 comes in. So let's look at approach 2. So again, let's just make a copy of the dictionary. Then we will just do that. So I have my dictionary object, which is student info. Now, I'm going to get the age of Michael. So how do I get the age of Michael? Using approach 2. That's what we are going to do next. So to do that, we say student info dot get, and then you specify your key. In this case, is what? Michael. That's what we do. So let's execute this command. So we have what? Student info.get Michael. We have 19. So you have your dictionary object.get and you specify the key. So Michael is what? 19. Now let's do same for Nancy. So we say student info dot get, and we say Nancy. So let's do this. So here, if the key does not exist, then you have non-returned. Nothing will be returned. Let me just put it that way. Okay, so here you will not get an error message. Okay, no error message will be raised, but you have something like this. Okay, so if you do this, then you avoid a situation whereby you have this error message coming, which may break your codes. So you can try that. So if you are 100% sure that all the keys that you specify are in the dictionary object, then you can go for this approach. But if you are not sure, or if you think some of the keys may not be present, then you have to use this approach. Okay, so this approach will return nothing if the key does not exist. Okay, so there are other approaches you can use to make the checks and then properly get your codes behaving the way you want them to do. Okay, so that's how we check for the values of a key. Okay, now that's one. What you did was to just get the value for a single key, but you can use a loop statement if you are looking for values for multiple keys. Okay, so that's something that you can look at later on. Now we are keeping it simple. Now let's look at the next activity. Now the next thing we are going to look at is how to copy additional objects. So let's do that now. It's also straightforward. So let us use this same dictionary. If let's say I want to make a copy, then I'll say dict copy equals, and I'll say student info.copy. So this will make a copy. So I can say dict copy, and I'll have that also displayed for me. So that's how we make copies of a dictionary. Now let's look at the last activity, and that is deleting entries in a dictionary. So with the entry deletions, you can delete a single entry or multiple entries, so you can also delete all entries. So we are going to look at all these approaches. So let's start with deleting an entry. Now let me use the scores dictionary for now. So I'll just copy and paste because now we already know how to create dictionaries. Okay, so I have my scores dictionary. So if let's say I want to remove an entry, so I want to remove the records for player 1, then it's simple. I just say del, I bring my dictionary object, I bring my square bracket, and I indicate the key. So player 1. So let's execute this command. Perfect. Now, if I say scores, we have player 2 and then player 3. Player 1's records have been removed. Now, what about multiple entries? Again, let me just copy this and then use that here. So for multiple entries, I'll use a loop to do that. So first, I need to get a list of the keys that I want to remove. So I can say to delete equals, and I'll say player 1, player 2. Okay. And by the way, for list objects, I've already covered that in a separate tutorial. So just check the description box and you'll find a link to that tutorial. Or you can also click the link here. Okay, now let's proceed. So I have the list of players that I want to remove, the records. So I'll use a loop statement. So I can say for player in to delete the scores player. So let's execute this command. Perfect. So now I have deleted the entry. So I can say scores and then I'll get just player 3 because we remove the records for player 1 and player 2. So that's how we do it. So there's the loop statements that I use. Now let's look at the last one, which is deleting all entries. So again, I'll make a copy of it. I could have used the dictionary copy by the way, but I'll just use this approach. So to delete all entries, it's simple and straightforward. All that I have to do is to say scores.clear. And then everything is gone. So if I say scores, it becomes an empty dictionary. Okay. So I will advise that you be careful when using the clear command. If possible, you can make a copy of the dictionary and then manipulate the copied one. Okay, so this is how we delete all entries in the dictionary object. Okay, so if you look at some of the methods or most of the methods, I think this one I did not cover the pop, but you can also check. And then this one too I did not cover, but I can check. So just experiment, look at what I covered, and those that I did not cover here, try to reproduce or try to repeat them and then practice. So that's for it. Okay. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Or if you also want, let's say, one-on-one Python tutorial sessions, you can also reach out to me and we can arrange for a session. So that's all. So just tell the discussion box, you'll find my links to all those stuffs. So if you're also interested in machine learning, I have some tutorials on that. So check the description box. You have all tutorials that I've made on machine learning as well. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next session. Goodbye.